Okay, so now we're gonna be talking about khas again. Mutlaq, which is basically unrestricted statement. So mutlaq is the unrestricted statement in text and cannot be limited by khabar wahid or qiyas, exactly like the first type of am and other types of khas that have passed at the beginning. So the example for this in the book is فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. So wash your faces. Now this statement is not am because it doesn't have any plural and it doesn't have the word ma or man in it. Or I mean, it does have plural in the sense wash your faces, but the command here is washing it. And it doesn't say how much of the face and stuff you should wash. So in reality, the statement itself is khas mutlaq. So a statement that is unrestricted. It just doesn't give you a specific thing to do. Now, this is how you would explain it and write your answer. So you say that the washing is unrestricted, it's unqualified, and there is no condition attached to it. Imam Shafi would add a condition. He makes all the things in wudu that are fard, and we don't say that they're fard, we just say they're sunnah because we're not allowed to add to the Quran. And the Quran here only says wash your faces and that's it. So this means that the obligation will just be fulfilled by the washing. So there are khabar wahid that say that you have to have the intention for wudu, that you have to say bismillah for wudu, that you have to do wudu in order. Our principle is that a mutlaq statement cannot be limited by khabar wahid or qiyas, and that therefore we will not add to the text of the Quran and alter its meaning, but we can act upon both. We can reconcile between both. So how we do that is that we make the washing compulsory and we make the intention doing order, saying bismillah, either sunnah, mustahab. It's either sunnah or mustahab. So this is again our principle. Mutlaq is the unrestricted text and cannot be limited by khabar wahid and qiyas. So this is what you need to say and what you need to write when you get these kinds of examples. Mutlaq is not am, mutlaq is khas. Am is the general when it includes all things, when it includes a lot of things.
But this, it says unrestricted text.
I know, but when you say wash your faces, you don't include many people or many things. You just include one face.
What's khas again?
Khas is something specific, and it can either refer to a fard thing, so an individual, or it can refer to men and women, that would be a type, or it can refer to the jinn, so the human being, for example. Khas is just something specific.
I don't understand how mutlaq is khas though, because mutlaq is an unrestricted text and khas is not unrestricted because it doesn't include everybody. It only includes one specific person.
I understand what you mean, but here we're talking about statements and not words themselves. This is a khas in the sense that it's just saying to you that you should wash your face and that's it. It's not saying to you anything else.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
And it's not referring. You know, when we said if you go back to the definition of it refers to every word. Yeah, every word that refers to a multitude of individuals. Now, when you say wash your faces, you're not referring to any individual. It's just one face that you need to wash.
So it's the only am and khas then. There's only two, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's am and khas, and then you can have mutlaq khas, and then there is muqayyad khas. The book doesn't give examples about muqayyad khas, but muqayyad is basically something like that.
Okay.
It's basically the text that is restricted. Whilst here the text, here the text is unrestricted, but it's still specific because you just wash. That's what it's trying to tell you. Whereas muqayyad is restricted, so it would tell you more detail, but there's no example given in the book. Let's have a look at the example number 2 then. الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة. So the unmarried female and male who commits fornication should both be given 100 lashes. Okay, so this is again, you have this example, you say that this is a mutlaq unrestricted text and so cannot be limited by khabar wahid or qiyas. So, okay, why is it mutlaq? Why is it unrestricted? Because it just says zani wa zaniyatu. It just refers to these two categories of people. They should just get lashes, all of them, 100, and it doesn't add any other thing. Now, what is there to add is the khabar wahid actually. So the had is a fixed punishment and we cannot override the Quran. So only the lashes will be carried out. You only have that punishment. But in hadith, they do mention had is a fixed punishment, as it is a divine ordained punishment that you owe to Allah.
Can you write that on the screen?
Okay, so I mean, I'm pretty sure you know these two. So lash them. Had is a fixed punishment. Let's restart this properly. So الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما 100 جلدة. So for the fornicators, you lash them each one 100 times. So the had is a fixed punishment and we cannot override the Quran, so only the lashes will be carried out. This is unrestricted mutlaq text that doesn't give any more. It just says that the punishment for this fornicators is just that. It doesn't say that you can do anything else. But there is a khabar al-wahid, so this is the khabar al-wahid. And he mentioned that the fornicators will be lashed and exiled. Now, that's the problem here, that the exiling, that the hadith says that you have to be exiled, but the Quran doesn't say that you have to be exiled. The Quran is unrestricted on that matter. So because of that, we either reconcile or we abandon the text. So in this case, we can reconcile. So to reconcile, it is obligatory on the judge to issue the lashes. However, to exile someone is only going to be optional. Okay, so the third example, وَلْيَطَوَّفُوا بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ. So to do tawaf. Around the Atiq means free. So and perform tawaf around the freed house, the Kaaba, which has been freed from tyrants. This is Surah Hajj, verse 29. Okay, so this is our unrestricted text. Okay, only sorry might not be unrestricted, but the reason why it's unrestricted is like other people have made other statements about it. We don't agree that we should add to our Quran based on those statements. So here is the explanation for this one, is that no condition is placed on how the tawaf should be done. It's unrestricted. So you say this is mutlaq on the way to do tawaf, on the way of doing tawaf. And no condition is placed on how the tawaf is done. Based on our principle, we will not add the condition of ablution to the tawaf, but we will implement the khabar wahid in a way that does not alter the text of the Quran. This is our principle, that you do not add to the khabar wahid. You do not add to the Quran with the khabar al-wahid or the qiyas, but if you can reconcile, then we will, and we will act on them both, otherwise we will not. So in this case, we can reconcile. So hence, we say that it is wajib to do wudu, and you would need to sacrifice an animal if you do not have wudu. So this is called damun. You sacrifice an animal. Now, other people have mentioned, but we do restrict the statement, and it does go against our principle, because the condition for tawaf is that you do it 7 times. Tawaf is done 7 times, but this is actually because we have hadith mashhur, with which you used to restrict the statements. So hadith mashhur are hadiths that have been mentioned by 3 people or more in every generation. So the same hadith has been narrated multiple times by multiple people in multiple generations. So when you have a hadith mashhur, you can restrict the mutlaq statement. You can limit it. Otherwise, if you have one statement or you have qiyas, you can't do that. We have one last example for khas mutlaq. So warka'u ma'ar-raki'in, and bow down with those who bow. So the text is mentioning an unrestricted ruku'. So how is it restricted? So it's mutlaq on the way you do ruku'. So it doesn't say that you do ruku' hurriedly, it doesn't say that you do it slowly. It doesn't say anything. You just do ruku' and it's fine. So based on our principle, we will not add the condition of being composed, but we will implement the khabar wahid in a way that does not alter the text of the Quran. So I wrote these bullet points down like that because that would be the answer that you'd write in the exam. So I think that way it would be a lot clearer. So what's ta'dilul arkan? Ta'dilul arkan is when you're calm and composed in the way you do things, in the postures of salah. So this ta'dilul arkan has been mentioned in the hadith as a khabar wahid, but we won't make that fard for the completion of ruku. The Quran says that just do the ruku and you'll be fine. Okay, so how do we reconcile between these things? We make the ruku fard, which already is because of the Quran anyway, but ta'dilul arkan, we make it wajib. And if you don't do it, you do sajda sahwa if you miss it out by mistake. So Imam Shafi and Abu Yusuf actually consider ta'dilul arkan to be fard. So they add to the Quran in this case. But according to our principle, we cannot limit it by khabar wahid or qiyas. I know I'm going to keep saying that over and over again, but hopefully it's clear that you cannot do this.
Can you explain point 2?
Okay, so based on our principle, we will not add the condition of being composed, ta'dil arkan, but we will implement the khabar wahid in a way that does not alter the text of the Quran. So there is a hadith somewhere, maybe it's mentioned in the book, I don't know. So there's probably a hadith at some point where it says that your ruku is probably not done properly if you're not calm, if you're not composed in your salah. So in that way, the hadith will kind of say that just doing the ruku is then fine. But our principle is that these kind of statements, they cannot add and they cannot alter the meaning of the Quran, which is why we have to reconcile them and act on them in a way that doesn't change the meaning of the Quran. Because if you say that ta'dilul arkan is fard, like Imam Shafi and Abu Yusuf, you're saying that the Quran is also making a fard. But is the Quran making a fard? No, it's just saying to you that you have to do ruku'. So they're adding to the statement. They're adding to the clear text of the Quran. Because we say that we can't do that. That's why we make things wajib. Whereas Imam Shafi doesn't have the concept of wajib. He just makes whatever we make wajib, he makes it fard. This one's about qiyas. So remember qiyas is analogy, just comparing things with something else. Okay, so you have scenario 1 where a man does a zihar of his wife. So he compares his wife to a part of her mother or someone else. Obviously, if you do something like that and you want to go back to your wife, you do have to serve a kafara for it. So there are 2 kafaras that you can do. Well, the first one is obviously free a slave, but if you can't free a slave, obviously you fast or you feed 60 people. Now the rule is that when you fast and then you end up when you're fasting and while you're doing the kafara, then you end up having intercourse with your wife, but you haven't finished the 60 fasts yet, you have to restart. But when you are feeding 60 poor people, we say that you do not have to restart. We do not compare feeding the 60 poor people to doing the 60 fasts. So in the 60 fasts, you restart the kafara if you have jima'. That's another word for intercourse. Wati is also another word for intercourse. The whole B is also another word for intercourse. I know there was one person who didn't know what that meant. Yeah, we do not restrict the unrestricted text of feeding based on qiyas of fasting, so he will not restart. Yeah, I hope this is clear. And then the second scenario is a man who does zihar or breaks an oath. So we said that you can free the slave, fast, or feed people. So this is about slaves. So the condition when you break an oath, no, it's not. No, that slave that you need to free when you have murdered someone and you're doing kafara, it has to be a Muslim slave. But when you do zihar or you break an oath, you can free any slave and he does not have to be Muslim, because the text that is saying to you to free the slave, if you do zihar, you break an oath, is unrestricted. It's not making being a Muslim a condition. So we will not make a condition simply by comparing it to the case where you murder someone and you have to free a Muslim slave. Okay, so responses, objections. So we have our principles, right? And sometimes there are things that people say to us to say that you're actually going against your principles, but that's obviously not the case, so we do have an answer for that. So the objections are that they're saying that the Quran is saying وَامْسَحُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ, وَامْسَحُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ, wipe your heads, okay? And he's not saying anymore. So that's a mutlaq statement. He's unrestricted. But we restrict it by saying that you have to, at the very least, do masa of 1/4 of your head. Based on a khabar wahid, you go against your principles. That's so bad. But no, that's not the case. So the statement of the wiping is actually mujmal. Now mujmal is an unclear statement that needs clarification. So the reason why it's mujmal is because when the Quran says wipe your head, it doesn't say how much you have to wipe. A person who wipes a half, in reality, has wiped their heads. If a person wipes 2/3 of the head, that would also be wiping 2/3, or that would also be wiping your head. Now, is that okay to do? No, because you're saying, so what I was saying is that if you wipe 1/2 or you wipe 2/3, that would all be fard apparently. But can you have fards like that? No, you can't, because it can't be that one person he wipes a half and apparently that's fard on him, and that 2/3 that's fard. And what about the person who did a half? He didn't complete his fard because the fard is 2/3. Like, it's very confusing. That's not how you do things. So this same is actually mujmal, and the khabar wahid that says that you only have to wipe the amount of 1/4 of your head, that actually clarifies it. And the second thing that they tell us is that the Quran is unrestricted in reversing the prohibition. You do 3 divorces, but you restrict it with consummation. So this is referring to halala. And the Quranic ayah is the one that we did at the beginning, until she marries another husband. Now the key thing is the word husband. So the word nikah is used in combination with the husband, but the thing is that she already has a husband in reality. So we interpret the word nikah to actually mean consummation instead, because it would make sense, because because the Quran ayah doesn't say until she marries another man. He already says husband immediately, so we can assume that nikah actually means consummation instead of getting married generally. But if that's not sufficient, then the restriction to the fact that the woman has to consummate the marriage if she wants to go back to her previous husband after being divorced 3 times, that's actually established from hadith mashhur. So there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that's actually the case.